Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the strange readings on her screens. The ship had been traveling for 3 months beyond the Centauri system, farther than any human had ever gone before. Her crew of 200 was excited but nervous. They were making history. "Captain, these energy readings don't make sense," said Dr. Marcus Webb, the chief science officer. He was a tall man with gray hair who had spent his whole life studying space. "There's nothing out here according to our maps, but something is creating massive energy waves." Sarah looked at the data. The numbers were impossible. Whatever was, out there was putting out more energy than a star. But their telescopes showed empty space, just darkness and distant stars. "Could our equipment be broken?" she asked. "I've checked everything 3 times, Marcus replied. "The readings are real. There's something here that we can't see." The Prometheus was Earth's newest and best ship. It had taken 20 years to build and cost more money than most countries had ever seen. The ship was massive, with silver walls and blue lights running along the corridors. It carried the hopes of all humanity. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. The Council was made up of 12 alien races who had been traveling space for thousands of years. They had found Earth and decided to let humans join their group, but only as junior members. Humans could only go to certain places and couldn't have weapons on their ships. Most of the alien races looked down on humans. They thought humans were too young and too aggressive. The Zephyrians, who looked like giant birds, often said humans were children playing with fire. The Korath, who were like walking rocks, believed humans would destroy themselves within a century. Only the Valdari, a peaceful race that looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin, seemed to think humans had potential, but even they worried about human nature. Sarah had fought hard to get permission for this mission. The Council had only agreed because the destination was in what they called dead space, an area where nothing important existed. They thought it would be safe to let the humans explore there. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of structure," called out Lieutenant James Park from the navigation station. He was young and eager, fresh out of the academy. It's huge." Sarah walked over to look at his screen. What she saw made her heart race. In the distance, something was taking shape. It wasn't a ship or a planet. It looked like a ring, made of light, spinning slowly in the darkness. "How big is it?" she asked. "The ring is about 10,000 kilometers across," James said, his voice shaking. "Captain, that's bigger than Earth." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the screens. The ring was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It glowed with colors that seemed to shift and change. Sometimes it looked solid, sometimes it looked like it was made of pure energy. "Sir, I'm getting readings from inside the ring," said Ensign Lisa Rodriguez from the sensor station. "There are structures in there." "Lots of them." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This was not what they had expected to find. The mission was supposed to be simple. Check out some strange energy readings and come home. Now they had found something that could change everything. "Should we contact Earth?" asked Marcus. Sarah thought about it. They were so far away that any message would take weeks to reach home. By the time they got orders back, they could have already learned everything there was to know about this place. "Not yet," she decided. "Let's get closer and see what we're dealing with first. But keep all our weapons powered down. We don't want to seem threatening." The Prometheus moved slowly toward the ring. As they got closer, the structure became even more amazing. The ring wasn't solid at all. It was made of pure energy that somehow held its shape. Inside the ring, they could see buildings that floated in space without any support. Some of the buildings were bigger than cities. "Captain, I'm detecting life signs," Lisa reported. "But they're strange. I can't tell what kind of life forms they are." "Are they dangerous?" Sarah asked. "I don't know. The readings keep changing. Sometimes it looks like there are millions of beings in there. Sometimes it looks empty." As they got closer to the ring, strange things began to happen to the ship. The lights flickered. The gravity systems made soft humming sounds they had never made before. Some of the crew reported feeling dizzy or having strange dreams. Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's doctor, came to the bridge looking worried. "Captain, I need to speak with you. Half the crew is reporting unusual symptoms, headaches, vivid dreams, and some say they're hearing voices." "What kind of voices?" Sarah asked. "They say the voices are asking questions. Questions about humanity, about our history, about what we want from the universe." Sarah felt her hands shake slightly. This was beyond anything they had trained for. But she was the captain, and her crew was counting on her to make the right decisions. "Captain!" called out Lieutenant Park. "Something's happening to the ring!" Everyone looked at the main screen. The ring was changing. Parts of it were reaching out toward their ship like giant hands made of light. The energy patterns were becoming more complex, creating shapes that almost looked like words or symbols. "Are they trying to communicate?" Marcus wondered out loud. Before anyone could answer, the ship shook violently, not from an impact but from something else. It felt like the Prometheus was being lifted by invisible hands. "Captain, our engines aren't responding," shouted the chief engineer over the communication system. "Something is pulling us toward the ring." Sarah tried to stay calm, but inside she was terrified. "All hands, prepare for possible contact with unknown life forms. Follow first contact protocols." The ring grew larger and larger on their screens. Soon it filled their entire view. The ship was being drawn into the center where the floating buildings waited. As they passed through the ring itself, every screen on the ship went white for a moment. When their vision cleared, they were inside. The Prometheus floated among structures that defied all understanding, buildings that seemed to be made of crystallized music, towers that reached up and down at the same time, gardens that grew in impossible colors. "Captain," whispered Marcus, "I don't think this was built by any race we know about." Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a voice filled the bridge. It didn't come from their speakers. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, including inside their own minds. "Welcome, children of Earth," the voice said. It sounded ancient and wise, but also sad. "We have been waiting for you." The last thing Sarah remembered was reaching for her communication device to send a message to Earth. She wanted to tell them about the incredible discovery they had made. But her hand never reached the controls. The UES Prometheus vanished from the universe, taking all 200 souls aboard into something beyond space and time. Back on Earth, weeks passed before anyone realized they were gone. When the search ships finally arrived at the coordinates, they found nothing but empty space and the fading traces of energy that made no sense to anyone who studied them. The greatest adventure in human history had ended before it had truly begun. Admiral Rebecca Torres stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at readings that made no sense. For 57 years, she had worked in space defense, and she had never seen anything like this. "Ma'am, the object is definitely heading toward Earth," reported Sergeant Kim Walsh from the sensor station. "But its movement patterns are impossible." Rebecca walked over to look at the data herself. Whatever was approaching the solar system was moving in ways that broke every law of physics she knew. One moment it was traveling faster than light, the next it was completely stopped. Then it would change direction without slowing down, as if momentum meant nothing to it. "How big is it?" she asked. "That's the strange part," Kim replied. "The size keeps changing. Sometimes it looks like a small ship. Sometimes it's bigger than a space station." Rebecca had been just a child when the Prometheus disappeared. The whole world had mourned the loss of Captain Chen and her crew. It had been humanity's greatest tragedy in space. The Galactic Council had used the incident to put even more restrictions on human exploration. "Ma'am, we're getting a transmission," called out Lieutenant David Park. He was the son of James Park, who had been lost with the Prometheus. David had joined the space service to honor his father's memory. "Put it through," Rebecca ordered. The main screen flickered, and then a face. appeared that made Rebecca's heart skip a beat. It was Captain Sarah Chen, looking exactly the same as she had 57 years ago. Not a day older, not a gray hair out of place. Luna Station. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Prometheus, requesting permission to approach Earth, the transmission said. Sarah's voice was calm and steady, as if she had just been gone for a few weeks instead of almost 6 decades. The command center fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen in shock. Rebecca had to sit down to keep from falling. Over, Captain Chen, Rebecca managed to say. This is Admiral Torres of Luna Station. Ma'am, you've been gone for 57 years. Are you and your crew all right? Sarah looked confused for a moment. 57 years? Admiral, I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. We've only been gone for 3 months. We have incredible news to share with Earth and the Council. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Either Captain Chen was lying, or something very strange had happened to the Prometheus and its crew. Captain, I need you to hold position while we verify your identity, Rebecca said. A lot has changed since you left. Of course, Admiral. But I should warn you, the Prometheus has been upgraded. We don't want to cause any alarm when you see us. The transmission ended, and Rebecca immediately called Earth Command. Within minutes, every important person in the solar system was on a video call. The President of Earth, the heads of all the major space agencies, and even representatives from the Galactic Council. Are we sure it's really them? Asked President Martinez. He was an old man who had grown up hearing stories about the lost ship. Voice analysis confirms it's Captain Chen, reported the head of intelligence. But something's wrong. She looks exactly the same as she did 57 years ago. The Valdari representative, Ambassador Veltar, leaned forward on the screen. His blue skin looked pale. This is not possible. No known technology can stop aging for so long. Maybe they found something out there, suggested Dr. Elizabeth Foster, Earth's chief scientist. Something that changed them. Admiral Torres looked at the sensor readings again. The ship was getting closer, and now she could see why Kim had been confused about its size. The Prometheus was huge, at least 10 times bigger than it had been when it left Earth. Admiral, called Kim from her station. You need to see this. Rebecca walked over and looked at the detailed scans. What she saw made her question everything she knew about reality. The ship was phasing in and out of normal space. Sometimes it was solid, sometimes it seemed to be made of pure energy, and the hull had patterns on it that hurt to look at directly. Ma'am, the ship is requesting permission to dock at Earth Station, David reported. Rebecca made a decision that would change everything. Grant permission, but evacuate all non-essential personnel from Earth Station, and get our best security teams ready. As the Prometheus approached Earth Station, people all over the planet watched on their screens. The ship looked like something from a dream or a nightmare. Its hull was covered in geometric patterns that seemed to move and shift. Lights ran along its surface in colors that had no names. When the ship finally docked, it was clear that this was not the same vessel that had left Earth decades ago. It was longer, wider, and taller. Parts of it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The docking bay doors opened and Captain Chen walked out, followed by her crew. They all looked exactly as they had when they left, young, healthy, and unchanged by time. But there was something different about them. They moved with a confidence that seemed almost otherworldly. Admiral Torres, Captain Chen said as she approached, it's good to be home. Rebecca studied the captain's face. There was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a depth of knowledge that seemed almost infinite. Captain, we need to debrief you immediately, Rebecca said. The whole solar system is on high alert. I understand, Sarah replied. But first I need to speak with the Galactic Council. What we've learned will change everything. Dr. Foster, who had flown up from Earth to meet the crew, stepped forward with her medical scanner. Captain, with your permission, I'd like to run some basic health checks. Sarah nodded and held still while the doctor scanned her. Dr. Foster's eyes grew wide as she read the results. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Captain, according to these scans, your cells have been completely regenerated. You're not just unchanged. You're better than when you left. Your DNA has been improved." "Improved how?" Rebecca asked. "Every genetic flaw has been corrected. Every sign of aging has been reversed. It's like someone rebuilt them at the cellular level." Captain Chen smiled sadly. "The architects were very thorough." "The architects?" Rebecca asked. "Who are the architects?" "The beings who built the structure we found," Sarah explained. "They're the oldest race in the galaxy, maybe in the universe. They've been waiting for us." Lieutenant David Park stepped forward. His hands were shaking. "Captain, my father was on your ship, James Park. Is he?" Sarah's expression softened. "Lieutenant Park is fine, David. They're all fine. The architects have kept us safe while they taught us things." "What kind of things?" Dr. Foster asked. Sarah looked around at all the faces watching her. "Things that will make the Galactic Council very nervous. We've learned how to do things that they thought were impossible." As if to prove her point, Sarah reached out and touched a solid metal wall. Her hand passed through it like it was made of air. Then she pulled it back, and the wall was solid again. "We have a lot to discuss," she said quietly. "But first, I need to contact the Council. They need to know that the rules of the galaxy are about to change." Rebecca felt a mix of excitement and terror. Humanity's lost children had returned, but they had brought back knowledge that could upset the balance of power in the galaxy. "Captain," she said slowly, "what exactly did these architects teach you?" Sarah's smile was both beautiful and frightening. "They taught us how to be more than human, Admiral, and now we need to decide what to do with that gift." As the crew of the Prometheus walked deeper into Earth Station, reality itself seemed to bend around them. Whatever they had become during their long absence, one thing was clear. They were no longer the same humans who had left Earth 57 years ago. The galaxy was about to discover just how much they had changed. The council chamber on Centauri Prime had never been so tense. Representatives from all 12 member races sat around the massive circular table, their various forms of communication devices translating everything into their native languages. At the center of the room, Captain Sarah Chen stood calmly, as if she was discussing the weather instead of reshaping the future of galactic civilization. Admiral Torres sat in the human section, still trying to understand what she was hearing. Beside her, Dr. Foster continued to study the impossible medical readings from the Prometheus crew. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said High Commander Zekthar of the Korath. His rock-like face showed no emotion, but his voice carried disbelief. "You claim to have met beings that predate our oldest civilizations?" "Not met," Sarah corrected gently. "We were tested by them. The architects have been watching the galaxy for millions of years, waiting for races that might be ready for the next step in evolution." The Valdari ambassador, Veltar, leaned forward. "Captain Chen, in all our histories we have found no evidence of such beings." Sarah smiled sadly. "That's because your races failed their tests, Ambassador. The architects only reveal themselves to those who pass." A wave of angry sounds filled the chamber. The Zephyrian delegate spread his massive wings in annoyance. "Impossible! Our civilization has existed for over 10,000 years. And in all that time," Sarah replied, "your people have never moved beyond your basic nature. The Zephyrians remain proud and territorial. The Korath stay rigid and unchanging. The Felkar are still driven only by profit." She looked around the room. "Only the Valdari have tried to grow beyond their original nature, which is why the architects respect them." Dr. Marcus Webb, who had accompanied Sarah to the council meeting, stepped forward. He looked exactly as he had 57 years ago. but there was something different in his eyes, a depth of understanding that seemed almost infinite. "The structure we found was a testing ground," he explained. "The architects create them throughout the galaxy. Most ships that find them either turn away in fear or try to attack. Those crews are sent home unchanged." "And if you pass?" asked the hegemony representative, a slug-like being whose species was known for their intelligence. "If you pass," Sarah said, "you learn things that change everything you thought you knew about reality." She walked to the center of the chamber and held up her hand. Slowly, her fingers began to glow with a soft blue light. The light spread up her arm and across her body until she was surrounded by an aura of pure energy. "The architects taught us that matter and energy are just different states of the same thing," she explained. "With the right knowledge, you can change from one to the other at will." To demonstrate, Sarah reached toward a heavy metal chair. Instead of touching it, her hand passed right through it. Then she concentrated, and suddenly she was holding the chair, which had somehow become as light as air. The chamber erupted in chaos. Several representatives stood up demanding explanations. The Korath delegate slammed his massive fist on the table, cracking the stone surface. "This is trickery," he shouted. "No race can manipulate matter like that." "No race you know of," Sarah corrected. "But the architects have moved beyond the physical limitations that still bind you." Admiral Torres felt her heart racing. "Captain, what else can you do?" Sarah looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Admiral, we can do things that your language doesn't have words for. We can step outside of time. We can exist in multiple dimensions at once. We can reshape reality at the quantum level." Dr. Foster stood up, her scanner still beeping with impossible readings. "Captain, my instruments show that your crew is somehow existing in a state between energy and matter. How is that possible?" "The architects rebuilt us," explained Dr. Webb. "They took apart every atom in our bodies and put us back together according to new rules. We're still human, but we're also something more." The Valdari ambassador spoke quietly. "What did these architects want from you in return?" Sarah's expression became serious. "They wanted to understand humanity. For millions of years, they've watched races rise and fall. Most follow the same patterns. They grow powerful, become aggressive, and eventually destroy themselves or stagnate." "And humans are different?" asked the Zephyrian delegate skeptically. "Humans surprised them," Sarah replied. "When faced with impossible challenges, other races either gave up or tried to fight. Humans did something else." "What did you do?" Admiral Torres asked. "We adapted," said Sarah simply. "When the architects showed us problems that seemed impossible to solve, we found new ways to think about them. When they tested our moral character, we chose cooperation over dominance. When they offered us power, we asked what responsibilities came with it." Lieutenant David Park, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. "Captain, is my father really all right?" Sarah's expression softened. "Your father is more than all right, David. He's become something wonderful. All of our crew has. We've kept our humanity, but gained abilities that most races spend millions of years trying to develop." The chamber fell silent as everyone tried to process what they were hearing. Finally, High Commander Zekthar spoke. "Even if what you say is true, why should we believe that humans will use these abilities responsibly? Your species is young and often aggressive." Sarah's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger, but her voice remained calm. "Commander, your people have had faster-than-light travel for 8,000 years. In all that time, have you ever used it to help a struggling civilization develop? Or do you only use it to maintain your own power?" The Korath delegate had no answer. "The Zephyrians have had energy weapons for 6,000 years, Sarah continued. "How many times have you used them to protect the weak instead of expanding your territory?" The winged being ruffled his feathers but said nothing. "Every race in A This chamber has had centuries or millennia to prove they could use advanced technology wisely, Sarah said. Instead, you've created a galaxy where the strong dominate the weak and new civilizations are kept under strict control. Ambassador Veltar nodded slowly. The captain speaks truth. We have not been good teachers. The architects believe humans can do better, Sarah explained. They've given us tools that could reshape the galaxy. The question is whether the rest of you will accept that change or try to fight it. And if we fight? Asked the hegemony representative. Sarah looked sad. Then you'll lose. The architects didn't just give us knowledge, they gave us the ability to defend ourselves against any threat. Dr. Webb stepped forward again. The technology we've gained doesn't just make us powerful. It makes us responsible. We can see the consequences of our actions across time and space. We understand how our choices affect others in ways you can't imagine. Show us, demanded the Korath delegate. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were glowing with the same blue light that had surrounded her earlier. Commander Zekthar, she said quietly, in 17 years, your people will discover a new planet rich in the crystals your technology needs. You will decide to take it by force from the primitive civilization that lives there. That choice will lead to a war that destroys both your species and theirs. The commander's rocky face showed shock. How could you possibly know that? Because we can see the threads of possibility that connect all things, Sarah explained. We know what choices lead to growth and which ones lead to destruction. The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative was staring at Sarah with a mixture of fear and awe. The architects gave us this knowledge because they believe humans might be the first race to use it wisely, Sarah said. But that remains to be seen. We could become tyrants who rule through superior power, or we could become teachers who help others grow. What do you choose? Asked Ambassador Veltar. Sarah smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young captain who had left Earth decades ago. We choose to try something that's never been done before. We choose to share what we've learned, but only with those who prove they're ready for it. And how will you decide who's ready? Asked Admiral Torres. The same way the architects decided. We were ready, Sarah replied, through tests that reveal the true character of a civilization. The representatives looked at each other nervously. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted in ways they were only beginning to understand. Fleet Admiral Corzon of the Zephyrian Empire stared at the massive display showing the positions of over 3,000 warships surrounding Earth's solar system. Ships from all 12 council races had answered the call, the largest military gathering in galactic history. Admiral, the human system is completely surrounded, reported his tactical officer. They have nowhere to run. Corzon spread his massive wings in satisfaction. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Chen's impossible claims at the council meeting. 3 weeks of emergency sessions, heated debates, and growing fear among the council races. The decision had been unanimous. Humanity's new power was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. If humans really had the abilities they claimed, they could dominate the galaxy within decades. Better to act now while they were still just one ship. Open a channel to all fleet commanders, Corzon ordered. The faces of 11 other military leaders appeared on his screen. Each represented thousands of years of military tradition and experience. Together, they commanded enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. This is Fleet Admiral Corzon, he announced. Operation Containment begins now. The human system will be sealed off from the rest of the galaxy until they surrender their new technology. High Commander Zekthar of the Korath fleet nodded his massive stone head. My ships are in position at the outer planets. Nothing gets through. Valdari. Peace fleet standing ready, added Commander Lizara, though her blue face showed obvious reluctance. We still believe this is a mistake. Your objection is noted, Corzon replied coldly. But the council has voted. Humanity must submit to oversight. On Luna Station, Admiral Torres watched the alien fleets take their positions. Every human military base in the system was on highest alert. Earth's own fleet of 200 ships looked pathetically small compared to the armada surrounding them. "Ma'am, Captain Chen is requesting permission to address the alien fleets," reported Lieutenant Walsh. "Put her through," Torres ordered. Sarah's face appeared on the main screen. She stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking calm despite being outnumbered thousands to one. "Admiral Torres," she said quietly, "please tell our people to stay calm. This will be over soon." "Captain, they have 3,000 ships out there," Torres said. "Maybe we should consider negotiating." Sarah's expression was sad, but determined. "Admiral, some lessons can only be learned through experience. The council races need to understand what they're really dealing with." The transmission ended, and Torres felt a chill of worry. What was Captain Chen planning? Aboard the Prometheus, Sarah stood with her senior staff in what had once been the main conference room. Now it was something else entirely. A space where reality seemed flexible, where the walls showed views of distant galaxies and the air itself sparkled with possibility. "Captain," said Dr. Webb, "long-range sensors show the alien fleets are preparing to attack. They're charging their weapons." "I know," Sarah replied. "They need to see what they're up against, but we'll be gentle." Lieutenant James Park, the same man who had been young and eager 57 years ago, looked at his readings. "Ma'am, they're demanding our surrender, full technological disclosure and permanent council oversight." Sarah touched a control panel that flowed like liquid under her fingers. "Open a channel to Fleet Admiral Corzon." The Zephyrian's angry face appeared on their screen. "Captain Chen, you have 1 hour to power down your ship and prepare for boarding. Your new technology will be confiscated for the safety of the galaxy." "Admiral Corzon," Sarah said calmly, "I'm going to give you a demonstration of what you're actually threatening. Please watch carefully." Sarah closed her eyes and extended, her consciousness beyond the ship. The architects had taught her to perceive reality as it truly was, not solid matter, but patterns of energy and possibility. She could see every ship in the alien fleet, every weapon they carried, every frightened crew member. "Begin Phase 1, she said quietly. On every alien ship in the system, something impossible happened. The Prometheus simply vanished from their sensors, not destroyed, not hidden, gone as if it had never existed. "Where did they go?" shouted Corzon to his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. They just disappeared." Then the Prometheus reappeared, but not where it had been. It was inside the Zephyrian formation, surrounded by dozens of battleships. Weapons that should have fired automatically didn't respond. Targeting systems that never failed showed only empty space. "Impossible," whispered Commander Zekthar as he watched his own sensors fail. "No ship can move like that." Sarah's voice came through every communication system in the fleet at once. "Phase 2. Suddenly, half the alien fleet simply stopped existing. 3,000 ships became 1,500 in the blink of an eye. The remaining crews screamed in terror as their fellow vessels vanished without a trace. "This is not weapons fire," Sarah's voice explained calmly. "Your ships haven't been destroyed. They've been temporarily removed from this reality. Observe." The missing ships reappeared exactly where they had been, completely undamaged. Confused crews ran diagnostic checks and found nothing wrong with their vessels. "Phase 3, Sarah announced. Now the Prometheus began to change. The ship grew larger, its hull shifting and flowing like liquid metal. Sections that had been solid became translucent. Parts of the ship existed in multiple dimensions at once, creating optical illusions that hurt to look at. Within minutes, the Prometheus was 10 times its original size, its new form both beautiful and terrifying. Weapons that tried to target it found nothing solid to lock onto. "Your weapons cannot harm us," Sarah explained. "Your sensors cannot track us. Your fleets cannot contain us. We exist partially outside normal space-time." Fleet Admiral Corzon tried to maintain his composure, but his voice shook. What are you?" "We're still human," Sarah replied. "But we've learned to be more than we were. The architects showed us that physical laws are really just suggestions for those who understand the deeper patterns of reality." Commander Lesara of the Valdari fleet spoke up. "Captain Chen, surely you don't mean to threaten us." "Commander, I'm not threatening anyone," Sarah said. "I'm showing you why threats against us are meaningless. You brought 3,000 ships to force us to surrender. But you could bring 3 million and the result would be the same." To prove her point, Sarah reached out with her enhanced abilities and gently touched the quantum fields that held matter together. Every weapon in the alien fleet simply stopped working. Not damaged, not destroyed. They just ceased to function on a fundamental level. "Your weapons are offline," she announced. "Don't worry, I'll restore them in a few minutes. But consider this. If we wanted to harm you, there would be nothing you could do to stop us." The silence that followed was deafening. 3,000 ships, millions of crew members, all helpless against abilities they couldn't understand. High Commander Zekthar finally broke the quiet. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Sarah replied. "We don't want to rule you or hurt you. We just want you to understand that the old way of doing things is over." "What old way?" asked Corson. "The way where the strong dominate the weak, where new civilizations are kept under strict control, where fear drives policy more than wisdom." Sarah began restoring the alien weapons, one ship at a time. "The galaxy is about to change, whether you like it or not. You can either adapt to that change, or you can spend your time fighting a battle you cannot win." Commander Lisara spoke for her people. "The Valdari wish to learn from you, Captain Chen, if you'll have us as students." "Of course," Sarah replied warmly. "The Valdari have always shown wisdom." One by one, other fleet commanders began to express similar sentiments. The demonstration had been more effective than any weapon could have been, but Fleet Admiral Corzon was not ready to give up. "This isn't over, Captain. The Council will never accept human dominance." Sarah's voice became sad. "Admiral, we're not seeking dominance. We're offering partnership. But that's a choice each race will have to make for themselves." The massive alien fleet began to disperse, but everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity had revealed power beyond imagination and used it with restraint. The question now was whether the galaxy's older civilizations could learn to live in a universe where humans were no longer the junior partners. As the Prometheus returned to its normal size and appearance, Sarah looked out at the stars and wondered what the architects would think of their students' first real test. She had a feeling they would be proud. 2 years had passed since the demonstration at Earth, and the galaxy was still learning to adjust to its new reality. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of New Horizons Station, humanity's first construction project using architect technology. The station existed partially outside normal space, allowing it to serve as a hub for travel between distant star systems. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going. Some came to trade, others to learn, and a few came hoping to steal the secrets of human technology, all left with a better understanding of how the galaxy was changing. "Captain," said Dr. Webb, approaching with a data pad in his hands, "the quarterly reports are in from our partner worlds." Sarah smiled at the word partner. That had been her innovation. Instead of the old council system of senior and junior members, humanity had created partnerships with species that proved they could handle advanced technology responsibly. "How are the Valdari doing with the phase shift generators?" she asked. "Better than expected," Marcus replied. "They've already figured out how to use them for medical purposes. They're healing genetic diseases that were thought to be incurable. That was typical of the Valdari. Give them any new technology, and they immediately looked for ways to help people with it. It was why they had been humanity's first partners in the new galactic order. "What about the hegemony?" Sarah asked. Marcus's expression became more cautious. "They're still struggling with the basic concepts. Their request for quantum manipulation tools has been denied again." Sarah nodded. The slug-like hegemony were brilliant, but they couldn't seem to understand that advanced technology required advanced ethics. Every proposal they submitted involved using new abilities to gain advantage over their neighbors. "Keep working with them," she said. "They'll figure it out eventually." The door to the observation deck slid open, and Admiral Torres walked in. She looked older now. The stress of managing humanity's new role in the galaxy had taken its toll. "Sarah," she said, using the informal address they had adopted, "we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The Korath have been testing weapons against our phase shield technology." Sarah wasn't surprised. High Commander Zekthar had never accepted the new order. His people had spent the last 2 years trying to find ways to counter human abilities, convinced that another confrontation was inevitable. "Any success?" she asked. "None whatsoever," Torres replied. "But they're getting more desperate. Intelligence suggests they're planning something big." Sarah walked to the center of the observation deck and placed her hand on a control surface that looked like crystallized light. Immediately, her consciousness expanded across the galaxy, touching the quantum fields that connected all things. She could see the Korath fleet gathering in secret, far from the major trade routes, hundreds of ships loaded with experimental weapons. But she could also see something else: fear. The Korath weren't planning an attack because they were confident of victory. They were planning it because they were terrified of becoming irrelevant. "They're scared," she said softly. "For 8,000 years, they've defined themselves as the strongest military force in the galaxy. Now they don't know who they are." "That doesn't make them less dangerous," Torres pointed out. "No," Sarah agreed, "but it makes them more predictable." Dr. Webb looked up from his data pad. "Sarah, there's something else. We've received a message from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. They've detected something approaching from outside the galaxy." Sarah felt a familiar chill. "Show me." The observation deck's walls shifted to display deep space sensor readings. Far beyond the galactic rim, something was moving toward them. It was massive, artificial, and using technology that even human sensors couldn't fully understand. "Though, architects?" Torres asked. "No," Sarah replied, studying the patterns. "This is something else. Something newer." Marcus enhanced the image, and they could see details that made them all uncomfortable. The approaching object was clearly a ship, but it was the size of a small moon. Its hull was covered in weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the galaxy. "Another test?" Torres wondered. Sarah shook her head. "I don't think so. This feels different." She expanded her consciousness again, reaching out toward the approaching vessel. What she found made her stagger backward. Sarah. Marcus caught her as she nearly fell. "What did you see?" "Refugees," she whispered. "The ship is full of refugees. They're running from something." The implications hit them all at once. If beings advanced enough to build ships that size were running from something, what did that say about whatever they were running from? "How long until they arrive?" Torres asked. 6 months, Sarah replied. "Maybe less if they increase speed." Marcus was already working on his data pad. "I'll contact the council representatives. We need to prepare for first contact protocols." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We handle this ourselves. The council races aren't ready for this level of contact." Torres looked concerned. "Sarah, you can't make decisions for the entire galaxy." "Watch me," Sarah replied, but her tone was gentle. "Rebecca, the old system of committee decisions and bureaucratic delays won't work anymore. When that ship arrives, we need to be ready." "To act quickly," she turned back to the display showing the approaching vessel. "Besides, I have a feeling this is connected to our experience with the architects. They prepared us for something, and I think this might be it. Over the following weeks, Sarah worked with her crew to prepare for the arrival of the refugee ship. The Prometheus was upgraded again, its hybrid technology allowing it to interface with systems that existed on multiple dimensional levels. The Valdari provided support, their natural empathy making them ideal for first contact situations. A few other species offered help, but most of the council races remained skeptical or afraid. The Korath continued their weapons testing, convinced that the arriving ship was part of some human plot to gain even more power. When the refugee vessel finally entered the galaxy, its size was even more impressive up close. It was beautiful in an alien way, with flowing lines that suggested organic growth rather than mechanical construction. Sarah took the Prometheus out to meet them, accompanied by a small fleet of volunteer ships from various species. As they approached, her enhanced senses picked up transmissions in languages that predated any known civilization. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Park, "they're trying to communicate. The universal translators are having trouble, but we're getting fragments." "What kind of fragments?" Sarah asked. "Words like fleeing, darkness, and the hunger that devours stars." Sarah felt her enhanced awareness touch something vast and ancient aboard the refugee ship, minds that had lived for millions of years, carrying knowledge that spanned entire galactic clusters. And underneath it all, a fear so deep it made her own enhanced abilities seem small by comparison. "Open a channel," she ordered. The main screen filled with an image that was both beautiful and terrifying. The being that appeared was clearly not from this galaxy. Its form shifted between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes pure energy. When it spoke, the words bypassed their translators and went directly into their minds. "Young architects," it said, and Sarah realized it was addressing her crew. "We seek sanctuary in your galaxy. The Devourers have consumed our home." "Devourers?" Sarah asked. Images flooded her mind, vast mechanical intelligences that consumed entire star systems, converting matter and energy into more of themselves. A galaxy-spanning war that had lasted for millions of years before the refugees finally fled. "They follow," the being continued. "In perhaps 1,000 of your years, they will arrive. Your galaxy must be prepared, or it will share our fate." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. The architects had prepared humanity for this moment, giving them the tools they would need to defend not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. "We'll help you," she said, "and we'll prepare for what's coming." The being's form brightened with what might have been relief. "You are indeed worthy students of the architects. Together we may yet save what remains." As the refugee ship was guided to a safe harbor beyond the galactic rim, Sarah knew that everything was about to change again. The petty squabbles between council races would seem meaningless when faced with a threat that could end all life in the galaxy. Humanity had become the galaxy's protectors, whether they wanted the job or not. She opened a communication channel to Earth, the Council worlds, and every species that had the courage to listen. "This is Captain Sarah Chen," she began. "I'm calling an emergency session of all galactic civilizations. We need to discuss our survival." The old order was ending. In its place, something new was beginning, a galaxy united not by conquest or politics, but by the simple need to survive what was coming. And at the center of it all, a species that had once been considered too young and too aggressive to be trusted with power now stood ready to teach the galaxy how to fight for its very existence. The students had indeed become the teachers, and the universe would never be the same.